on Balls.ie, where we'll be offering you the best in-depth coverage for the championship summer. On site and across our social channels, we'll have lots of great stuff for you throughout the week, but every Monday we'll be here with you for a full breakdown of the weekend's action. I'll be joined by former Kerry captain Darran O'Sullivan to talk football, and for hurling we'll have tip captain Shane McGrath. So that's just 5 All-Irelands and 12 All-Ireland finals between the three of us, to borrow that old joke. But we'll be talking to the lads in a minute. But there's lots more as well. Besides, we'll be continuing our fine Balls.ie tradition of guessing the handicaps for the weekend's games. PJ and Gary are standing by for that. And we'll have a ranking of all 32 away jerseys for this year's this year's championship season. So lots for you to disagree with there as well. We're going to start today with football though, and despite an absolute thriller in Navan between Offaly under Wiley Old Fox John Mahan and Louth under Wiley Old Fox Mickey Hart, which Offaly came through in extra time. The story of the weekend probably was the serious marker laid down by the three pretenders to Dublin's crown: Kerry, Donegal and Mayo. And I'm delighted to say, as I mentioned before, that former Kerry captain, former Kerry All-Ireland winning captain, actually, Darran O'Sullivan is with us today, as he will be throughout the summer. Darran, how are you?
Not too bad, mate. How are things?
Things are good, actually. Thanks. It wasn't the greatest weekend, I suppose, but, a lot of the talk even last night and on some of the coverage over the weekend has been kind of the age-old, I suppose, where are we going with the weaker counties and so on and so forth. But I wonder, is a bigger story, given what we saw last year, just how much Kerry, Donegal and Mayo kind of clearly put into that game. There's no messing this year, I get the sense. There was an average of an 18-point win. The scores, even in the three games, were remarkably similar. Mayo 323, Sligo 12 points, Kerry 322, Clare 111, and Donegal 225. Down 112. That's two Division 2 teams that were just cast aside there. It looks to me anyway like as if these teams are like, we're taking no chances whatsoever this year and we're going for a hell for leather from the start.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely down here in Kerry, I think last year's hurt against Cork, where I genuinely have been saying continuously, I think they took their eye off the ball and they weren't going to get caught again this year. And to be fair, I think Clare, probably outside of Munster, maybe don't get the credit they deserve. They're a solid Division 2 team. They're progressing all the time. So I wasn't surprised to see Kerry as ruthless as they were. Donegal, I felt as well last year, got caught. I think they thought they'd get over Cavan. They didn't. And genuinely, they're outside of the Kerry team, obviously, they were one of my favourite teams to watch at the moment, the last couple of years. So your teams just know you can't take your eye off the ball at the moment, but the divide seems to be getting bigger. And for the teams, I'd say like Clare, that are progressing, this could stop that progression or even bring them backwards, because there's such a delay now between when they play again. So, look, I suppose the format isn't ideal, but it's kind of been the hand we've been dealt with what's been going on the last year and a half. But it'll be interesting going forward, even next year, have these teams gone further behind the bigger counties.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny, like with Clare, who've had good runs in the qualifiers over the years, to not have the qualifiers there this year, regardless of Munster championships and B championships and everything like that. The lack of qualifiers is a killer, because Clare have this really good season. Everybody's very positive about them, and in their last two games, they come up against two of the best 3 or 4 teams in the country, in Mayo for promotion, and then Kerry in the championship, and then it's over. And you've to wait till next February or whatever it is when they get when they play again to build on that progress. Really tough.
Oh, it is very tough. And my big thing there is it's obviously tough on the players that are there, but even the generation that are going to come after, you get them from them seeing these boys playing week in, week out, going on a run in the qualifiers or pushing one of the big teams to the last 5 or 10 minutes. And I suppose for the next 7-8 months, they won't be able to watch these players playing at all. So it's a knock-on effect of the current players, that their progression and their kind of to what they're trying to build is going to be stopped. But then the younger generation aren't getting to see these players and be looking up to them.
We'll go into kind of the individual stuff on Kerry and kind of where they're going. But I'm just wondering, it's like you mentioned Donegal being one of your favourite teams. They had 115 in the first half against Down. Now, the fact that none of these 3 games were contests definitely took away from them in terms of how interesting they were to watch or how good they were to watch. But the fact is, massive scores from all 3 teams. And we are seeing that it's been happening for a while now, but I think we're definitely going to see it this year, that all-out attack seems to be the way that the big teams have decided is that if there is a way to stop Dublin, there's no point in putting 13 men behind the ball. Those days seem like they're well and truly gone.
Yeah, which is it's great to see. I think we all want to see scores. We want to see players taking each other on. Like that, I suppose we're chatting off there about the forward mark. I think I think more and more players are going to stop taking the forward mark and actually have confidence in themselves to go one-on-one. I had this conversation with Ian McGee a couple of weeks ago. When I started, you get a ball and you could turn and face your man and go. And you had the confidence that it was one-on-one. And as I got to the middle part of my career in the latter stages, you were never one-on-one. There was always another man coming to cover, even two men coming to cover. So that was kind of it. I suppose that's why things got a bit tighter and the scores weren't as good. But we're seeing now defenders being asked to defend, and a few of them aren't as good at defending as they are at attacking. So it's great to see. How long it'll last is another thing. But like that, I think the bigger teams as well, they probably realise our defence isn't good enough to hold the Dublin team, but our attack might be good enough to put them under pressure. So I think it's a case of, look, they've all tried this defensive thing to get over a team like Dublin. It just doesn't work. You're only drawing. It's like playing backs versus forwards. It doesn't work. And they have to come up with a new plan. So from a spectator's point of view, it's great. We'll get to see all this attacking football. But it'll be interesting coming later in the year when it does come to them crunch games. Are the managers brave enough to go, right, we're going attack versus attack?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But if you can't live with an attack, I think Kerry definitely jumps to mind. The forwards all brilliant, I thought, on Saturday evening. Is there a sense, now we could be jumping the gun here, but after the league and one game in the championship, is there a sense that Paddy Clifford is the missing link there to bring all these talented players together? Because he was just fantastic at the weekend. And, it's funny, almost the older brother coming in, being the person who's actually going to make that difference.
Yeah, well, I think what he does, like, obviously he's a fantastic footballer. He has all the skills. I think he highlighted that with the pass for Shawnee Shea's first goal. Like, not even just the pass. It was just the fact that the first instant get the head up and he saw the pass and he was able to kick it straight away. There was no looking around for an easier option. There's a pass on. He drilled it straight into the chest, which is a great skill. But he works like a dog. He's out around the middle. For me, the person he's going to benefit most is Shawnee out on centre forward. Because that's a hard role. The way the wing forwards go, they kind of drift backwards now and back and forth. So a lot of times if you're on the 40, you're on your own. And like the Fitzgerald Stadium, Croke Park, they're big pitches to be over and back on your own. So Paddy comes out and he is that extra player there. So all of a sudden the Kerry backs coming out can transition that bit quicker, because instead of having one person to hit who may be tired from the last run, you have two of them there. And the big thing then after that is he has all the skills to be able to link play and then to finish play as well.
And if they hit on something with, like, there's two more kind of things that I'm interested in looking at that Kerry forward line. The makeup of them would be Paul Gainey playing in a kind of a new role, and I thought brilliant. I thought he looked like he had a new lease of life, and I know he played a few games in the league there as well. And Jim O'Connor in midfield just seems like it seems anyway. And again, it's a very early stage, but from the evidence of what we've seen, that seems like that's the partner for David Moore, and that in some ways we've been waiting for, like in terms of the yin and yang between them.
Yeah, I think like Dermot O'Connor is just a beautiful footballer. He just glides across the ground as well, and he's starting to get, obviously he's got a bit more experience. He's been in the panel last couple of years now. He's getting stronger every year, and he's just so athletic. I thought actually at one stage they were going to keep him wing forward for another year and Jack Barry would be in, but obviously Jack Barry got an injury during the league. Dermot O'Connor came in, and you can't move him. At the moment, you can't move him. He's just playing too well. He's so comfortable on the ball. He can travel up and down. He is the Kerry midfielder for the next 10 years, you'd imagine. And it's a great foil for someone like David to have, that he can concentrate on fielding the ball and pass it off, that he doesn't have to be the guy going up and down the field continuously, because obviously in his later years, you just can't do it. So now he has someone with great legs that's well able to do the scoring as well. So it takes the pressure off him.
Would you have any worries about anything you saw over the 70 minutes?
It's hard to say worries. I suppose they started so well. They were always going to drop off at different stages, because I suppose realistically the game was over very early. I suppose the big worry was, I always expected Kerry to win well. I did think that Clare would cause them a few problems in the attack, because they're very direct. They should have had a goal early on as well. There was a great ball in by Tubridy. can't remember who got the end of it, trying to punch it in. But they created a few chances. But I think that's a great thing. I wouldn't call them worries. I think it's a great thing that Peter Keane, the management, will be able to pinpoint, look, a fella got in there, or he's too open. So there are, like, not worries, but there are definitely places where they can improve. Like that Paul Murphy didn't play the weekend. He's the captain. Yeah. He's an ever present since 2014. Tyke Morley, very similar. You'd expect him to be, didn't start. So all of a sudden they have a week or 2 weeks off. They have this week 11 AVB. You can imagine the pressure now on the 6 starting backs that you have 2 regulars itching to get back in there. So it's probably good. It's a good thing for Kerry at the moment that all of a sudden they look like they have a bit of competition in the backs. Mike Breen from Beaufort. I played with Mike the last couple of years with Mick Kerry. Very quiet, unassuming guy, but I always be laughing. He's like a Rolls Royce footballer. He never seems to look flustered. He just cruises up the field. You'd be kind of saying at times, Jesus, will you go? Will you go? But no one gets close to him. So whatever way he's doing it well. So he's coming in and done really well. So I'm delighted to see him playing so well.
Yeah. Okay, well, good stuff for Kerry. They have a long old Munster Championship run this year. They might have to play 3 games, so it's tip neck in a couple of weeks. But the Donegal game, they have the longest route of them all. They have to win, the 4 games through. They've got Derry up next, who are, on fire really, and kind of blew everybody away in Division 3 in the football. But the big worry, I suppose, like they played well, and there's lots of positives to take from it. It wouldn't be it's not a negative Donegal conversation, but Michael Murphy, we didn't think he was going to play. We didn't think he was ready, and he scored a lovely point straight on. You're thinking, oh, maybe he's okay, and then you see him pulling up with that hamstring. I know you've had issues in the past, Darran. You've talked about it, where maybe you put your body through too much. You've tried to play on through injuries. You came back too soon a few times. Those things don't do you a whole lot of good in the long run, And look, Donegal want Michael Murphy to play. Michael Murphy wants to play, but it looks like a bad decision today, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was one of them ones. It's risk reward. He starts, he gets a point. You're thinking happy days, and then he's gone. You're there automatically thinking, I should have left him off. Like it's a very funny one. I don't think any other county has a player like Michael Murphy that really drives the whole thing. Like he's been doing it since 18, captain since 22. It is a one. If he's anyway fit, you can imagine, oh, look, we'll get him out there. We might be able to ease him through the game. But obviously now with the injury, it just looks like a really silly decision. I think they would have won that game without him. The fact that they have such a tough route, I can't see the sense in playing him. They have 4 games more than anyone else, and he's so important to them. Playing him through all them games, it just, now all of a sudden, look, it's easy to say, no, hindsight's a fine thing, but it looked like a very silly decision now, because hamstring injury, I don't care if it's grade 1, 2, or 3, it's going to take time. And even if it's recovered back your mind, you will be thinking, this can go straight away.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. There's so much with hamstrings. It can be the fact that they never fully prepare and they can niggle and then get away. But also there's a psychological, if there's one person you'd trust to get over a psychological issue, it would be Michael Murphy. But at the same time, it's always there, isn't it? As if I go full here, if I go for this ball, could the year be over? Could the more than a year be over?
100%, especially this year, because you get a semi-bad hamstring or calf or whatever it is, you're gone. Because even if you only miss 1 or 2 games, trying to get back up to speed that quickly, I just don't think you can do it. No, I suppose he can change his game, or it's not too explosive, but the hamstring can go at any moment. And like you said, the psychological aspect of it, geez, I think it was my last year, Kerry. I don't think I sprinted once.
Wow.
Just the fear of it going, and like that, if it goes, no, I'm gone for 4, 6 weeks, whatever it is, but then it's the bother of trying to get fit after being out for that amount of time. So look, it was obviously a big risk. They're going in against Derry now, and look, Derry are going to be full of confidence. They've had a great league campaign, but it is Division 3. So Donegal should be able to get over them without Michael Murphy if they are to be serious contenders.
Absolutely, yeah. Another serious contender then, as I mentioned at the start, Mayo. So they lose. So like maybe it's not quite their Michael Murphy, but it's not too far off in Killian O'Connor. And I was interested to see that Aidan O'Shea as the full forward, where, look, I mean, that's where we all remember him even as a minor or in corner forward when he was starting on the senior team as such a young man. But to see him back in there kind of full time, and did stay in there for the game. Sligo, of all the teams, we're talking about Clare and Down putting up whatever kind of fight they did. Sligo just at this moment in time, just not in a position to compete with Mayo. So it's hard to take anything from it. But would you see enough in O'Shea to think that actually, one, they can afford to lose him out the field a little bit for the bigger games, and two, that he can make that kind of Cillian O'Connor impact, even if it is in a different style?
Yeah, like you said, it'll be a totally different style. But I think to get the best out of Aidan O'Shea, Mayo have to change their style slightly. They're very much a running team, and there's no point running the ball and then trying to kick it in when there's bodies in front of Aidan, because he has to work that bit harder to get frees than anyone else. You'd even see it the weekend. Every time he gave off the ball, there's always a stray fist coming in. And obviously, he's so big, he doesn't get frees as easily. I've always felt that he doesn't get the credit he deserves. But it's also because the style of play Mayo have, which is so effective for them, probably doesn't suit him. So I think they just need to taper it a small bit, that they are looking up that bit quicker, kicking in. A few times they did kick it in early, he wasn't catching it with his hands outstretched over his head. He was catching it to the side. And if you're a defender, you're not gonna reach around Aidan Shea to get that. And then the key thing for me is that the players know, right, when we get to this point in the field, it's going straight into Aidan, and then having the confidence, Aidan's going to win it. I'm going to run off him. And then as a defender, you don't know, right, is Aidan going to go on his own, or does a body come from his left and his right? So they'll obviously be working on in training, because Cillian's such a big loss to them. But I definitely think Aidan can have a huge say in the championship, but it's up to the Mayo players and the management to find a way of fitting in with him best.
In a weird way, it's almost like he's replacing the Andy Moran role rather than the Cillian O'Connor of kind of winning the ball and being there as the catalyst to either go himself or lay it off, isn't it?
But that's exactly it. And even I think the most important thing for me over the weekend was he got 2-2, and it was great. And that's just important. He doesn't have to go and try. Cillian would kick 1, 7 or 8, do that every game. That's not it. But being an option and a threat as a scorer is going to be huge, because I suppose when he's out the field, he isn't a threat as much. He's kind of left with a couple of yards of space because he's not a scoring threat. Whereas inside, he's so close to goal, he's going to be so dangerous. As a defender, you don't know. If I get tight, he's too big and strong, he'll turn me. But if I stay off him, GC can't chip this over, no bother.
Yeah. They've got Leitrim now in a couple of weeks in the other semi-final, so they'll have more of a chance to experiment without being too disrespectful to Leitrim, and they'll have a keen eye now on Galway and Roscommon this week. But before I let you go, Darren, there's some other matches I'd like not to even talk about in detail. There's some headlines, even the Offaly kind of getting that big win over Louth, and them looking like they're kind of continuing that progress that they made through Division 3. Wexford having their first championship win in a long, long time. But the one I wanted to mention just briefly was Limerick, because I remember we were doing a show a couple of years ago. We were talking a lot about Division 4. There was a time where I was like, how has this happened? Limerick are genuinely and quietly the worst team in the country here all of a sudden, you know, and you would have played against really good Limerick teams in Munster finals that almost they would have caught nearly any other Kerry team at least once in that time, but you guys were, winning All Irelands all the time back then. But they really fell off, and I think it's a sign of how far they've come in just a couple of years. Even that all the good work that we hear a lot about in Limerick hurling and stuff like that, it's obviously across the whole organisation there, and they've really got it back together. It's good to see for Munster, isn't it?
I'm delighted. It was a couple of years ago now. I actually got followed on Twitter or Instagram by Limerick footballers. And I was up in Limerick working, and I was travelling around. I was chatting to a fellow involved, and he was on about the underage structure and the work that they were putting in then. And it was a case of, we're putting it in now so we can reap the rewards later. Yeah. And it wasn't a case of rushing and trying to fix it overnight. It was a case of, look, we've fallen so far, we're going to build. And they have, and it's great. And even last year, they were very close to beating Tipperary, and we would have had a very different year. I think it was Conor Sweeney got an outside the boot, outrageous effort that I think was an equaliser in the game brought to extra time. So the progression, I genuinely, I think they'll go into this Cork game with a bit of confidence. You know, a lot of them are younger lads and kind of come in over the last year, so they're used to win. They're getting that winning feeling now, and I suppose they'll say to them, look, we should have beaten Tipperary last year. Tipperary went to beat Cork. Why can't we do it?
Yeah. So
look, for me, it's great to see, because I would like that. I played in a lot of them really good Limerick games, and they were a great team. And I suppose with the hurlers going so well and rugby being so big up there, football was what was sacrificed and what suffered. So look, it's great to see, like Clare, like we've mentioned already, have been progressing lovely, and it'd be great to have Limerick progressing now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, there's lots to talk about. We've 7 teams are gone, but everybody else is still there, and it's going to be a good summer ahead. I think we'll hopefully have some closer games to talk to when next time we have you on. But great chatting to you anyway, Darran. Thanks a million.
All right, cheers, mate. Talk to you later.
Great stuff. Darran is going to be with us throughout the summer. We'll talk to him on Mondays on the show here. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube, to please subscribe to the channel. If you are listening on the podcast, please subscribe to the podcast. We are giving away a GAA jersey of your choice if you do so. So please just take a screenshot, send it to the gaffer at Balls.ie, along with any championship stories that you might have, any photos of your own championship summer. You might not be in the ground, but please do let us know how you're getting on, and we'll talk about it on the show. So do subscribe, and you'll be in with a chance of winning a GAA jersey of your choice. It's time to talk hurling. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we've got Shane McGrath, former Tipperary captain and All-Ireland winner, with us. Shane, you were doing commentary on RTE yesterday for the Waterford Clare match. Not the thriller that we were hoping for, but there was lots of interesting things in it all the same, wasn't there?
There was, Mick, yeah. It wasn't a thriller, no, and it kind of had a opening of a feel about it there, kind of challenge match thing in the second half especially, but like there was lots of interesting things. I suppose what was one of the standout things for me, like a lot of people were saying maybe the art of defending was kind of gone, Mick, with the amount of scores going on to the game and everything. I tell you, Clare really brought that back yesterday, and they brought it back in spades, so much to the degree where if you look at even the match, there was a stage where I think it was Shane Bennett got so frustrated with Clare constantly swarming him, and Clare's platform was set up on their half back line. So what they were doing, Mick, was they'd have 5 guys across the half back line, which allowed John Conlon to have one of the best games he's ever had for Clare. But Shane Bennett got so frustrated with that constant swarm that he actually just dropped the ball. I think it was at Rory Hayes' ankles and just let fly. And for me, that's a sign of a guy who's frustrated with, like, I cannot get on a ball here because of the amount of tackling and the amount of swarming they're doing. And Clare brought that in spades. And what I suppose, Mick, you see yourself and like all the lads would see, what we're used to Waterford for under Liam Cahill is ferocious work rate first and foremost. And they were, as he said himself, they were as flat as pancakes yesterday. They were just dead. And you know what? In the final quarter, when they actually started working hard and brought on lads off the bench, they outscored Clare 9-4. But I was just looking through it there. Actually, 5 of the 9 points came from turning over Clare. So I suppose that's something for Liam Cahill to work on. But again, we just didn't see it. And, I think that's something that the Waterford guys really need to work on. Just getting back to that culture of we work, we win kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about the kind of losing the thing. It was one of the Bennetts, it might have been Stephen. There was a point in the first half where he was just being harried and hassled and decided, what am I going to do here? And just threw himself head first into one of the Clare players and randomly got a free for it. But you kind of sense to yourself, that was a good moment for Clare, weirdly, even though Waterford scored from it, because you're thinking there's nothing they can do here. They're just so frustrated. But why do Waterford? Now, look, the last 5 minutes might give them that catalyst to go ahead. They've got a qualifier route that isn't too bad this year for the team in the first round of the Munster Championship anyway. Why do Waterford do this seemingly every couple of years? Because we know all the talent they have. I think after all of the games this week, we have to wipe off everything we've seen in the league. We knew it at the time, but we wouldn't fully admit it to ourselves that it was borderline pre-season friendlies. But Waterford had their great year last year, 2 bad ones before that, a great one before that. They just seem to do this, and you knew after 10 minutes yesterday that they weren't at the races.
Yeah, I say this, about the league, right? Someone said to me before, the league now was as useful as a handbrake in a canoe, I think, this year to a lot of people, because like, what did some players really get out of it? They might have got on, maybe pushed themselves on to the 26, but you even take, especially 1B side of things, there wasn't really big tests in it, and some teams got. Some teams got out of it, and maybe other management we said, oh, look, this lad's actually in my top 20. But the league is the league. And me and you couldn't sit here, Mick, and we'd name the last 20 years who won Liam McCarthy. We'd struggle to name who won the league for the last 5 years. And I think that's what it comes down to, players want championships. So I think the Waterford thing yesterday, to be fair to them, right, and I think Cahill has done a super job in creating that kind of culture of team first. They only had 7 of their teams starting yesterday that started the All-Ireland final last year, and that's a killer for anyone. And you think about the guys who are missing. Stephen O'Keefe is taking the year out. Tadhg de Burka is injured. And Tadhg de Burka is the best in the country at cutting off space. And that's where Waterford fell down yesterday. They didn't cut off the space in front of Tony Kelly. And to be fair to Caleb Lyons, it was hard going on him because there was 40 yards always in front of him. And Iarla Daly he just doesn't have that reading of the game that Tadhg de Burka has. Tadhg de Burka would have been over back there because he's so used to playing at me. and he just didn't have the reading of the game. And Jamie Barnes' loss was massive in midfield because the link he creates between going forward, takes watching, but he's a massive between the two of them. And while the lads worked harder yesterday in Austin Gleeson and Darran Lyons is just not the same as Jamie Barnes. And in fairness, Austin now 4 points from play, but look, I think that's massive as well. I mean, any team that was missing 8 players from their starting team that are in the final, Mick, it's going to be hard going to get a win, like.
And it's 100% fair enough, and it's one of those things that, like, it mightn't have been taken into account enough when people were doing some of their predictions for the game and different things. Obviously, Clare were missing Shane O'Donnell and stuff as well, but in terms of Waterford missing all those players, it's a massive deal. And I don't mean to in any way, you can't really lose Jamie Barron and Tyg Burke and even Stephen O'Keefe out of a hurling team and have a massive effect on you, but it doesn't fully excuse them not showing up. Do you know what I mean? There is a difference there, isn't there, in not playing well because you don't have the players and not.
Yeah.
Effort is the wrong word because they're trying everything. They're trying too hard, if anything, but they're not. They didn't show up to their potential. They were beaten really early in the game. It felt to me anyway.
There are. No, you're on the money there, like, and I think that's where the frustration came from Liam Cahill, and even Mikey Beavens was kind of at the far side as well of the pitch, roar messages in, which, good for times I got to see them last year as well. You didn't really have to do that as much because it was just happening on the field they were putting in that effort, but there wasn't that work rate there yesterday, like. And I mean, you look at the first quarter, Clare 7 points to 3, but Clare had 9 wides in the first quarter. It could have been 14-15-3. Like, there was no pressure being put on the Clare half back line. And Conlon had a massive game now, don't get me wrong, but there was no pressure being put on the ball being delivered in. And, like, Caleb Lyons inside, well, he was a frustrated figure, and Conor Gleeson back there as well. But, like, what can you do, Mick, if lads out the field are getting time to get their head up, and in a pitch like Semple Stadium, it's so wide, the grass is so nice, and they're just bouncing that ball in front of him. And I think that's where the frustration from Cahill came, and that was fairly evident, that from even the substitutions he was making, like, he was looking at guys, and I tell you, look, Liam Cahill, he'd be very well known in Tip and Waterford, like, that he has a way of doing things, and if you're not willing to work hard or put it in, you're not going to stay in the field, and that didn't happen yesterday. But I suppose whereas last year they might have had stronger guys to bring in, they might have had as strong as guys to bring in today or bring in yesterday. So, that's where the frustration came. But look, I think the last quarter will give him a bit of hope going forward to next day, get bodies back. And you know what, Mick? I think they'll get a good run into qualifiers. Yeah. They're way better than whoever lost in Leinster over the weekend, to put it like that. Yeah. And they'll get a run. I do feel that they will feature quarterfinal stage at least, and probably back into a semi-final again, like.
Exactly, if they can get it back together, which they didn't do in 2018 and 2019 with insanely tough Munster Championship group stages, it never got a chance to do it.
Yeah.
But they still could have a part to play. Look, Shane, cards on the table here. I'm a Clare man, and despite the Dublin accent, I wore white and started to talk about Waterford to hide my bias. But talking to people yesterday in Clare, the overwhelming sense is, you said beforehand we lose Shane O'Donnell, go out and beat Waterford by 4 points and go on, you'd be delighted with things. But people were disappointed after the performance. They thought that there was a chance there for Clare to put down a real marker to hammer Waterford, really, and they were wasteful at times. Yeah. And they had some good performances. Tony Kelly there obviously played very well, scored some lovely scores from play, but the shooting from out the pitch, 22 wides is an insane number, the same amount of points as they got in the game. 122 wouldn't have beat. I would have just about beat Antrim at the weekend and wouldn't have beat Laois. I know they're different games, and that's the silly way of looking at it, but just it's not a good score these days. There's two fields of thought. The Clare fans are all negative about it and it's terrible. And then I've heard other analysts say, do you know what? The fact that they're getting those amount of chances, wides isn't the symptom. It's just what happens on a day. Do you know what I mean? Which camp would you fall into?
I'm in the camp of, if you don't shoot, you don't score. And I think there was up around 90 scoring chances yesterday. And I think Clare maybe had 49 of them. So that just shows me the dominance they have. I put it like this: I was talking to someone coming out of Semple Stadium yesterday, Mick, and they said to me that was a 4-point hammering, and I think that's the best way to put it. Like, it was a 4-point hammering. Like, 4 points, Clare were way better. 118 to 12 points coming into the final quarter. Waterford bring the guys off the bench to get 4 points from play from their bench. Bench was brilliant enough for Waterford yesterday, but Clare were way by far the better team in every asset of the field. Their work rate and everything. David Reedy, like, for an example. there's a guy who's really enjoying his hurling there. Like I worked with him there in LIT. I was involved with Fitzgibbon a couple of years ago. Wasn't enjoying his hurling a couple of years ago. Was thought it was too much of a job nearly to go play hurling. Now he's enjoying his hurling, is relishing it. Gets 2 points for play. Aidan McCarthy, didn't see much of him for the last couple of years. 3 points for play yesterday. You know, Colm Galvin is back, sitting deep, getting that, spraying that ball around. David McInerney comes on yesterday as a blood sub and then comes into the fray. Got on the world of ball there on at the far side from where we were, like, and looked really good on the ball. So I mean, Clare are going into this in a really good place. And you know, like Tip and Clare, I think I was talking to John Conlon briefly after the match yesterday, and one of the last times Tip would have played Clare in the Gaelic grounds. Now we played him in 2011, but the time before that was 2009 Munster semi-final, and that was John Conlon's debut. And you know, we've played 5 times since. Tip have won 4. Clare won 1. Remember 2018 there, the balls were hitting the post at either side in Simple Stadium, and Clare go through and Tip go out. But there's never nothing between them. I think there was a kind of a bad, bitter rivalry there, Mick, for a few years in the late 90s, especially, you know, when we were like, especially 97, the All-Ireland final, and Genie, down around Ballina, Killaloo, you'd be afraid to cross the bridge there in case something was going to happen either side. But like, what I feel is that Clare are going into this Tip will probably still be slight favourites. But I'd say, you know, Clare going into it in a great place, as you said. They have all their best players back in the field now. I'm not sure what Shane O'Donnell's story will it be too soon, but you know, with concussion, he could be back, you know, and Dave McInerney being back is massive. Conor Cleary was good yesterday. I think Rory Hayes has been outstanding for Clare this year so far. I was at a couple of league games, especially up in Parnell Park against Dublin. He was brilliant. He was brilliant that day. He was brilliant yesterday as well. He really was. He knows his job, Mick, and he does his job very well. Diarmuid Ryan's not afraid to scored a point from play, you know, and as you said, the aforementioned Tony Kelly, 112 yesterday. You know, if do you go man marking him? Like Tip's man marker for Tony 2 years ago, if you remember, was Brendan Maher. So will they do the same? I don't know. But it's all the one, Mick, who man marks him if you don't cut off the space in front of him. Because if he has space, you could have 3 lads on him with cattle prods and everything trying to bring him down. But it's a waste of time, because if he gets the ball in space, he's so good. Left, right, his agility, the way he just glides across as well. And even the last point he got from play, Mick, yesterday was class. It was probably the closest point he got all day. But he really had to sharpen the grip, flicked it over, Clare 4 points up, and really, you know, really says game over. Like, so, yeah.
There's a part of me with Tony Kelly that thinks like, have I not enjoyed him enough, I suppose. Like, he's still only 27, he's got years to go. But one of the things in the last couple of years is seeing him inside and coming towards the ball is just something we haven't seen enough of him in his career. And it just seems to have given him that lease of life. He doesn't have to be in there the whole time, but when he is, you just get an extra bit of Tony Kelly, don't you, that we just haven't seen enough of. Yeah,
where does he do most of his hurling for Ballyhay? I suppose out around midfield. But Ballyhay would play around Tony, like all good club teams do, like Ballyhay will do with TJ. You play around him, you give the ball to Tony if he can shoot, and if not, you try and solo and you still give the ball to Tony. So it's like, you know, in fairness to the Clare boys, they know that they have a class act in Tony Kelly, like, and they're willing to maybe sacrifice a bit of their game to get Tony Kelly on the ball. And he's like, you know, even his interview after the match yesterday, listen to him, you know, he scored 112, 5 points from play. Any lad would just be delighted with 5 points from play. But he said, you know, I left 4 or 5 behind me. Like, Tony Kelly could have scored 118 yesterday. He had a couple of uncharacteristic wides, even by his standards. Like, you know, even missing a free or two here and there. But he's just a class act. I love the way Shanahan and himself play together. I think potentially that's serious. Like, it's funny, isn't it? Funny that Aaron Shanahan didn't score from play yesterday, Mick. He could have scored 3-4 if the shooting boots were on. Like, you know. So, but I loved the point they got, the link play that they had, the understanding they had with each other. Shanahan touched it down. He knew Tony Kelly was coming, just popped it off to him. Tony Kelly off his left-hand side over the bar there in the second half. So I think they have serious potential of being really good together. But, you know, what will Tip do with him? I don't really know. As I said, you have to mark the space, cut off the space in front of him if he's inside. If he goes out the field, then, you know, it might be a little bit easier to mark him out the field, Mick. Just the way the 2 half-forward lines would play in the midfield. You'd have 13 or 14 bodies rather than 1v1 inside the 45, because 1v1 inside the 45 against him, no, you're not going to win that.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I talk about John Conlon a little bit, and we might get back to the Tip match briefly, but he played centre-back as he has throughout the league, played very, very good game, was an extra man yesterday, was a sweeper, and it's funny, one of the lads who has a much better memory than me pointed out to me last night that we did an interview with Conlon after the Leinster final in 2019 when Wexford beat Kilkenny, a separate interview about his thing, and he talked a little bit about the sweeper role that he was having to deal with at the time as a full forward, not be in. And he just gave some very interesting quotes. Remember that Pádraig Walsh set very deep, kind of almost behind the full back line in that match, and it didn't really work out. But it was just interesting that Conlon said at the time, you need to cut out and read the game to help out the defence, especially when you have a sweeper. A cornerback just needs to get it down and get it to the ground. I would have been very critical of the Kilkenny sweeper, Pádraig Walsh. Wexford targeted hitting the ball down the middle. That's where Pádraig Walsh can't be going up for the high ball. That's what Wexford want him to do. He needs to read the break. The sweeper needs to protect the D and be 25, 30 yards out, cutting out those deliveries, getting to the breakdown and covering the goal threat. He was too deep. He was nearly in behind alongside the full back. You must be the man sitting 5-10 yards in front of him, cutting it out or getting the break. And that was him speaking on the 1st of July 2019 to Balls.ie. Now, it shows to me, just a thought process that man has, that like he never played in that position. He's been a forward as long as I've watched him hurl anyway. I know he played there once or twice for Clare, but he's also, it's exactly what he did yesterday, didn't he? He got he was there for the ball when it was into space, when it was like his ball to win, but he was also the amount of little, I remember Dermot Ryan had like a flick at one stage, like a borderline ground ball, which you just don't see players do anymore, and that's because Conlon was there to wipe it up, and he was there to defend the goal when he needed to be as well. He got a great block later on. Like, he just had one of those games where he played that role to perfection. He did, right? But I would agree with what you're saying. I thought he did it very well. I thought all the players around him allowed him to do that as well. Like, if you think about it, right? Yeah. I was just going through stats there, okay? Look, Waterford would have went long 21 times with their puck-ups. So long being maybe going past the 65 midfield. They won 7 of them. So 7 out of 21. It's not a great return. Whereas Clare would have went long 20 times, they would have won 12 of them. So they had more ball winners to go along. But why was that? And for me, from being there, Mick, it was this, like, Diarmuid Ryan, John Conlon and Paddy Fitz are their half-back line. Colm Galvin is sitting deep. Cathal Malone and Ryan Taylor nearly play back in front of them for breaks. So John Conlon had 5 lads around him there yesterday that rarely he had to compete. Like, now, he made an unbelievable catch of a ball there in the first half. But if you look at it, he's usually back in space, left or right, because you have 5-6 bodies there that are working really hard, and he is a serious distributor of the ball. And like talking about yesterday, people, he was a forward before, so therefore he knows the type of ball that they want in. But you remember that pass was like Tom Brady-esque over the top to Aaron Shanahan there in the first half. Shane Fives just gets the sin bin. Like, that's some vision and some strike of the ball. But that's also a lad hurling with confidence. Because if you're not hurling with confidence, you're not taking that on. And that's what John Conlon was doing yesterday. All-star form 2 years ago, up in the forwards. And I think he's hurling with the same confidence now as he was then, back centre-back. I was actually with Clonlara for a year, and I talked to him yesterday after the match. I said, geez, we should have played you centre-back all the time rather than playing him in the forwards, But, like, he looked so at home there. But I think all the bodies around him really helped him as well. And again, Waterford not pressing. Waterford did not press him any time. Look at the amount of time John Conlon had in the ball. John Conlon knows he won't have the same time in the ball next week against Tip in the Gaelic grounds. But I'm sure he'll adapt, because he's a lovely striker of the ball. His vision is very good. And as we said, you can't beat the experience of actually being in there knowing this is the type of ball I'd like to get. And I think that's what made John Conlon, man of the match yesterday, like, really. Yeah. I suppose that my thing is, like, it clearly shows that they think about it as a team as well. Like, it's not a one-man job being a sweeper. It's just part of the system. You will be the one who ends up on all the ball, but you're not going competing to make it a 2-on-1 or anything like that. You're there in the right place at the right time. And it's a harder job than it looks sometimes, I think, as well. What about then? So Clare and Tip, we've some of the other games to briefly talk about before we go, but there's a sense in me that if Tip's forwards fire in a way that isn't as guaranteed as it would have been 2 years ago, was that fair to say? Then Clare could be in trouble. But, do Clare play 7 backs? Do Tip probably only play 5 forwards, really, the way they've been playing it? The matchups, the potential matchups for this one are intriguing, really. They are, yeah. And I think what Tip have gotten out of the league, Mick, is that they have a really, really solid backline now. You potentially be looking at maybe Barrett, Pádraig Maher, and Barry Heffernan, really good, solid full back line. Then we're looking at maybe Shamie Kendi, Brendan Maher, Ronan Maher, potentially, So it's the backs, it's a really, really solid back line. And I'm sure Liam Sheedy, you don't want to be conceding. And in fairness to that group of backs, when they play together, they don't want to be conceding. I suppose the question for Tip is, from there up, where do you play people? Because the Bonner thing is a big factor. You say if you take one for 2 weeks ago, Tip would have played him in the league
and just didn't have that work rate, maybe that intensity, that ferociousness in the half forward line, which they might get from Bonner. Also, Niall O'Mara was out with appendicitis. He had to get his appendix removed as well, so he was missing. He brings a work rate and intensity. What do you do with Dan McCormack? Because he does bring that work rate and intensity, but is his best placed midfielder half forward. So like I could name off 7 or 8 tip forwards for you there now, but you can have all, you know, really, really good hurlers, but you do need that ferocious intensity and work rate. And we seen yesterday at Waterford, they didn't bring it and Clare destroyed them. So tip will be like, you know, where will Noel play? Will Bubbles play? Shane will probably be in, you know, John McGrath's hitting form again. Jason Ford will obviously be on the team. Jake Morris, will he feature? But what I'm saying is, you do need that dog. That you need, you know, out of the 6 forwards, you need 1 or 2 guys to say, I'm just going to, all I'm about today, my scores today are going to be hooks and blocks. That's my scores. And, you know, in fairness to Sheedy, you know, he gives massive credit to the guys who do that. No more so than Liam Cahill, no more so than Brian Lohan. Mightn't get the 7, 8, 9s on the paper, Mick. But then, you know, if you come Tuesday night when you're watching video, the group will say, you know, you were man of the match today because you got 6, 7, 8 hooks, blocks, and that helped other guys score. So I just think it'll be interesting the way Tip picked their team. I think, you know, Liam has a fair idea of his top 20, but how he lined them out will be very, very interesting with the way Clare played at the weekend, Mick. But with not being biased, right? My heart obviously says Tip, but I just think we're got all our best players back on the field, and I know the boys like playing the Gaelic grounds. It's been good to Tip over the years. Even to go back to 2016 was their final massive win against Waterford there. Like, so I do think that the Tip boys. I do think they'll win at the weekend, yeah.
Yeah. Be interested to see how the 70 minutes championship intensity versus the fresh legs, that you never really know. There's always whoever wins, it's always that's the reason, do you know what I mean? But it changes every year on that one. But it's weird. We don't have time to go into it now, but it's so weird that you mentioned the dog in the defense, because one of the topics I was going to have, and I didn't think we had time for, was I thought that Cotton Malone played very well in the first half yesterday. I was thinking he's one of those players that the Clare fans always give dogs abuse to, but managers love him and teammates love him. And I think Dan McCormack is probably that player for Tip. And it is that one. There's always a player or two on every team, as you said. They don't get the 7 or 8 9s in the paper. But if a manager is consistently, if different managers are consistently picking the same players, we should probably accept that we probably don't see that the work to do.
Yeah, that's it. And like even Tory Kelly said it yesterday. Like, I mean, geez, lads, do you think you just pluck John Conlon out of centre back for the crack and throw him in there and never played him in training? Sure, he's obviously flying in training and internal games at 6 as well, like, and obviously doing a super job to play in there. But yeah, you're dead right. I think all the successful teams need a couple of guys that do sacrifice their game a small bit for the team. And like, you know, at the end of the day, the team wins, everyone wins, you know, and that's what it's all about. But you need a couple of guys to do that. Look at Colin Malone yesterday, Mick. He doesn't get credit for it. Austin was going through off the Hurley, went wide, but you know, if Colin Malone didn't make the selfless run to get back and just put a bit of pressure on him, he would have slotted over the bar, no bother, brought it back to him, I think 3 points at the time. But that's what Colin Malone does for you. And as I said to you, you mightn't get the all-stars for it, but you know what? You'll get the respect of the group, and I think that's what a lot of guys want. And now he has his team through to the next round, and look, that's a massive win for the group. Like,
absolutely, yeah. Before we go, the Dublin Antrim game, I think, sadly, I kind of think we sort of saw it coming with Laois a little bit, given how they were kind of performing the league, and they're in a kind of a regrouping point. But we probably thought there was more coming from Antrim, and I wonder did we see the difference in, as Darren Gleeson mentioned, you saw him on the Sunday game last night, saying championship and league, very, very different thing, and different again to the Joe McDonough. But for me, there was Dublin. Talking about all the best players being back, it felt like Dublin had that spine again that we haven't seen in a couple of years, of lads on fire as well, with a couple of new guys kind of coming through. And I wonder, while all the talk was about Antrim coming into it and how far they've come, and they absolutely have, and it shouldn't be underestimated, were Dublin one of the teams that we shouldn't take their league form too seriously, and that they beat Galway only 2 years ago and knocked them out of the championship, you know?
Yeah, I tell you, I made a call during the week. I actually really thought Antrim had a chance in this, you know, and I got dogs abuse on Twitter over. But look, what do you do? Like, but for me, what it was, I was actually in Port Laois 2 years ago, Mick, when Laois turned over Dublin, and you know, maybe they just didn't foresee it coming. Laois wrapped winning the Joe McDonough. It was on in Port Laois. There was a massive crowd there. There was a football match on before, and there was a real good field factor. Eddie Brennan was involved. And that just drove them over the line, and they got a massive win. And I know that would have really hurted Matty Kenny, like, as a successful guy coming in, what he did with Coola. I think there was no there was no cat. The cat was out of the bag basically for Dublin going in facing Antrim Saturday. They knew what they were going to bring. You know, Antrim could afford to rest guys in their last league game against Laois, because they had done so well getting a draw against Wexford and beating Clare. So Dublin knew what was facing them, and I'd say they would have learned an awful lot and have a lot of hurt there from losing to Laois in 2019. And I think they learned an awful lot from that. Antrim, it just didn't happen from yesterday. 22 points, 15 of the points come from Kieran Clark and Neil McManus. So Darran would be saying to the rest of the group, look, lads, we can't depend on two guys up at Liam McCarthy level. You probably will. Kieran Clark and Neil McManus probably win you most matches in the Joe McDonagh Cup. And that's with all due respect to the Joe McDonagh Cup teams. But it won't win you. Two players for a team like Antrim won't win matches at Liam McCarthy level. They were scoring averaging 25 points in the league, Mick. 22 yesterday, 9 or 10 of them are coming from frees. It just didn't happen from them. They were blown away. And as you said, Dublin, 331, they were a team sending out a message to everyone yesterday. You know, maybe a lot of people writing them off, saying that they weren't good enough, that Antrim could turn them over in Navan. They sent out a massive message yesterday. Regardless who they were playing, massive confidence for the group. And as you said, look at their spine of their team. Owen O'Donnell playing well, Liam Rush playing well. And for me, you know, we all know Donald Burke is such a good striker of the ball, I think he was averaging something like 12 or 13 points a game. Like again yesterday. But for me, one of the big guys for them, and Ronan Hayes playing really well. But Danny Sutcliffe is hurling some stuff at the moment, and he's catching the ball. If kids watch him or anyone watches him, he'll have the hurling this hand, he'll change it over, he'll snap it in the wrong hand. So hard to defend against, and he's so good at it. But he's a real leader for them. The amount of ball he's winning, throwing it off the guys. I think he popped up with 3 points himself yesterday. So he's enjoying his hurling as well, playing the best stuff we've probably seen him playing in a long time. And that's massive for a group like Dublin as well. So really good spine of a team, massive confidence going in. But I think Galway are on a revenge mission from 2019, Mick, from what happened with the score difference in Parnell that day. And that's still fresh in a lot of their minds. So I'd say that's definitely going to be said in the dressing room this week amongst the Galway guys who've been there for a few years anyway. Yeah,
they definitely won't be taking them lightly. But that is the thing this weekend. There's three semi-finals on the Saturday. We've got Tip and Clare on the Sunday. Cork and Limerick. It's sneaking up on us. Like when we talk this time next week, Shane, we'll know who they're in the Leinster and Munster finals. It'll only be 2 weeks of the championship gone. It's all going to happen very bloody fast this summer, and teams will get left behind. You'd almost think it'll just happen and you'll be gone. And it's a weird one, isn't it? It's very weird to think that there are so many. And games.
the calendar is hectic, Mick, isn't it? You know, if you lose next weekend, you'll be out in qualifier 10th, 17th, quarterfinal 24th, All Ireland semi-final. There's no break. Like losing next week means you're out. Bang, 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 bang. Winning next week, and you have a break of 2 weeks to reset, refresh, look forward to a provincial final. So next week it is massive. This weekend, you know, let's be fair to the Wexford Laois match and the Dublin Antrim match. They were grand. There was one real championship match, I'll call it, really, in my opinion, Waterford and Clare. You know, Clare are much better team. Hopefully next weekend now we've 4 semi-finals. Hopefully we'll get a couple of humdingers out of that, and we'll get the championship going. And as we're all saying, Mick, let's get bums back on seats as well. You know, I mean, there was more people at Mass yesterday morning around here than there was inside the Thurles watching Waterford Clare. So hopefully hopefully that'll happen.
Not helped by a double header in Portlaoise, I have to say, on Saturday for the Leinster semi-finals, which isn't ideal, I would say, considering that's even having the measly allocation as it is. But sure, there'll be more on that, I'm sure. But Shane, thanks. That was brilliant to chat to you. And I think I'll have to put a time limit on these conversations because we'll have 4 real matches to talk about next week. I've gone miles over on just one this week.
No bother. Sign of a good chat, Mick.
Thanks a million, Shane. Shane will be with us again next Monday to talk about, as I said, 4 provincial semi-finals in the hurling. So a huge amount to look forward to. We're really getting into the championship so quickly. Now, don't forget, if you've enjoyed that chat, if you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else, or if you're listening on the podcast, please do subscribe to the pod. Of course, if you do so, take a screenshot of you subscribing, send it to the gaffer at Balls.ie, and you'll be in the draw to win a county jersey of your choice. Now, you might want to pick an away jersey because there's some nice ones this year. Our man Finch, who's been looking at all kinds of things in GAA over the last few weeks, has had a look at all 32 of the away jerseys for the 2021 season, and he's ranked them. Have a watch.
A little while ago, we did our home jersey ranking for the 2021 GAA Championship. Well, now it's time to do the away. Of course, in some cases, counties use their goalkeeper jerseys instead of away jerseys, so that's exactly what we're doing here. But either way, you're probably going to disagree with us, so get down in the comments below. So without further ado, this Longford effort looks an awful lot like that O'Neill's template from 10 years ago, and nothing's changed since. We get what they were trying to do with the monotone look here, but if there's no amber, we are not feeling it. It's just a rehash, a reversal of the home kit, and we don't like that, so we don't like this. Were they going for a coffee look for this Sligo kit? It's strange, and not in the good way. Probably for good reason. We haven't actually seen anybody wear this kit. It's just too bland. We love a simplistic template, but if this was predominantly white, this would be an absolute winner. Listen, it's better than the home kit, but that doesn't say much. It's just missing a certain je ne sais quoi. At Carlo, you've got a manic colour scheme, but this is just completely underutilised. It looks like a bad training top. It's plain. They've had lovely green jerseys down on Westmead, but this isn't one of them. The reversal of Fermanagh home kit actually works an awful lot better. It's still fairly low down. Just reversing a home kit doesn't mean that it's going to be a hit, and this is a prime example from Kildare. Boring. We appreciate the strange infusion of the O'Neill's three stripes. This one doesn't particularly catch our eye. Your eye is drawn to the bottom left torso, and that's it for this Dublin kit. That navy is just so dull. This template works a million times better as an away kit for Leitrim. This is a clean effort. Whilst we admire the geometric pattern on this Tipperary kit, it's a tiny bit of an eyesore. Yes, it's another home jersey reversal, but we like the template here, and this is a clean effort. Simple, to the point, clear, clean as anything. You've got to respect them. The away jersey doesn't come close to the home jersey, but that's just how good the home jersey is. This is a clean effort from Offaly. You have to admire the Meath jerseys just being completely out there. We actually quite like this away kit, surprisingly. This down jersey could use more yellow, but that's just a small gripe. We quite like this. Look at this funky effort from the tribesmen. That's what an away jersey's all about. Go a bit haywire with it, lads. Whatever this shade of green on this Antrim away jersey is, it works. We're big fans of this. Listen, Monaghan have cracking jerseys. This away jersey's no exception. Big fans. It may be a bit too close to the home jersey, but you have to admire Azuri for going mad on these Waterford kits. It's a red Tyrone jersey. That's all we have to say about that, a red Tyrone jersey. Again, if you go a bit haywire with your away jersey, we respect it at Balls.ie. But sometimes simplistic is the way to go, and Cork have done that to absolute perfection on this away kit. This is a cracking bit of kit, and that upper torso design is an absolute joy to behold. Much like their Ulster neighbours Monaghan, you can always count on Cavan to produce a cracking kit. Top 3 is nothing to be sniffed at. The inclusion of the names of every club in Limerick is a nice touch as well. We're telling you lads, go a bit haywire. Look at that for a kit, absolute stunner. Fair play to Aoife Dunn from Swinford. The 6-year-old designed this jersey, and it is clearly the pick of the bunch this year.
And we'll have more from Finch across the summer on GAA Embedded. The away jerseys, lads, to be joined by Gary and PJ to guess the handicap, which we'll do in a second. But Gary, you had a part to play, if not entirely picked those rankings. Usually me and you completely disagree, but I agreed with your top 3 there. I presume most people won't, but if you do want to leave a comment on why we're all stupid, please do so wherever you're watching the show. Of course, if you want to win one of those jerseys, just subscribe to the show, send us a screenshot to the gaffer at Balls.ie, the draw to win a jersey your choice. But Gary, you defend the list?
Yeah, to the death. I think Mayo is definitely the best, and then like Kerry, you know, Cav and Monaghan, they're always up there, aren't they? Wexford as well. So yeah, I think this year there's some great efforts out there. Like, I don't know what it is about the GA, but it always seems like the away jerseys are way better than the home jerseys. Maybe it's just because there's always something a bit different instead of the same colours the whole time. But I don't know. I really like them this year.
It's weird to say that. I kind of want them to have the same colours the whole time. I don't know what that is about me, but that Meath jersey is like, why isn't that just a plain yellow jersey with green sleeve the way it should be? PJ, I'd say you're more along the traditionalist lines like I am for that kind of thing.
I would be.
White hoop is a disgrace.
Yeah, I would quite like the Kerry blue away jersey. I thought that. I think it looks nice. won one of those a few years ago. I did like the gold one they had a few years ago, Will, that I think a former player designed. I don't know, you might remember him or not.
Yeah, I heard of him all right. Yeah, he might have clotheslines in different places. But the meat jersey is bananas, says John on Facebook. Agreed, but it's a kind of a good type of bananas. It's a bit weird. They are goalkeeper jerseys as well, by the way, that are also masquerading as away jerseys, which is a fine GAA tradition in itself. I think I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, only about half the counties actually have an official away jersey because they just don't need to use them that much. So, yeah, but fair enough.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to wait for a big All-Ireland final between the same colour. Let's do guess the handicaps, lads. We're gonna do look. I was talking to Shane about it there. There's it's such a massive weekend of hurling ahead that the fact that there's actually I think 6 championship games in football has kind of been and only 4 in hurling it feels more like a hurling weekend. So we'll talk about all those semi-finals, but there are some decent football games as well, and we'll get to one or two of them in a few minutes. But starting off with that silly choice for a double header, I understand why Sky are doing the games and you can't be sending out too many OB units, but considering only 200 people are allowed to go, it's a pity that Galway and Dublin and Kilkenny and Wexford will take place in the same venue. But there are the fixtures that we're going to talk about here on Guess the Handicaps. But Kilkenny and Wexford, Gary, I believe you're the champion. I've lost track, to be honest, but you've won most of the competition so far this year. If anyone's listening for the first time, I'm going to mention the fixture. The two boys are going to take turns to who goes first. They're going to pick what they think the handicap is for the game, and whoever gets closest or on the money wins the point. Gary, Kilkenny versus Wexford. Wexford have had Kilkenny's number in recent years, but they did lose to them in the league. This is at 4:30 in Portlaoise on Saturday. We're starting with the second game first for some reason. Sorry about that. But Kilkenny, Wexford, what do you think?
Yeah, like you're saying, Wexford have a really good record against Kilkenny in the championship. But I don't know, there was something about that league game a few weeks ago that it just kind of seemed like, do Kilkenny kind of have Wexford figured out a little bit? Again, you don't know how much you can read into the league this year, especially, but I just have a sneaky suspicion that Kilkenny are gonna come out on top here, and I think that they could be they're definitely been targeting the championship all year, as they do every year, but they're really going to want to make a statement this year, I think. So this is a massive game for both teams, obviously, especially with the way the championship is this year, with the backdoor no round robin. I think Kilkenny will be favourites. I don't know, maybe -2, I think, would maybe be my prediction on that one for Kilkenny.
5:31 Wexford scored against Laois on Saturday, PJ. And that was with going basically, from what I could see in the highlights anyway, exclusively for goals for the last 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, so they were so accurate in that game. They hit 528 from play. Of that 531, 528 from play. Only 13 wides. When you're taking as many shots as they were, 13 wides as well isn't a whole lot. It looked like a much better Wexford team than, I know it was against Laois, but It looked like a much better Wexford team, more consistent one that we saw in the league. I think it was 10-point difference between the two teams in the league. Kilkenny were consistent during the league up until that last game against Clare. They were consistent, not spectacular. They tried out a lot of players. Every time we mention the league here, I'll think back to Shane McGrath saying it's as useless as much use as a handbrake in a canoe. So, well, what else do you have to go on? I guess I had written down here as well. Kilkenny -2.
Okay. Before we go, then I will say that was Gary's guess, and there is a chance to steal here, which you don't often have. Sometimes I'm sending you off here in a wild goose chase for 5 minutes while Gary's already got the right answer. But
so that makes me think it's either Kilkenny -1 or Kilkenny -3. So I'm going to go Kilkenny -3.
And you will pick up the point for that, Kilkenny -3, which, to be honest, lads, the league be the league. If I was Davy Fitz, and Davy Fitz is more like him than I am, this will be going on the dressing room door, because the record Wexford have had over Kilkenny recently is very, very good, and seemed like they had their number. You said it might have turned around, Gary, and that's a feeling you have. It's obviously a feeling that the bookies have as well. Galway versus Dublin then. Dublin, just talked about them 5 minutes ago there with Shane. I don't know. I didn't enjoy the match. I have to say that there was almost too much scoring for me, but I was impressed by Dublin. I thought that they were just very, they just took care of business against the team that everybody was coming out of the woodwork to tip for the game, and they hammered them. But Galway are a completely different matter. So PJ, Leash on Saturday.
So Dublin looks like they took a step up from the type of hurling, the level of hurling they were playing in the league for that game, whereas Antrim are still, they were probably playing at their max during the league, I think. So Dublin won that game in the league by 8 points, and they won it by 18 at the weekend. 331 is like a massive score, and it was a really good spread of scores as well, I think.
Yeah.
Like Donald Burke at 11 points, Ron Hayes 1-3, Keane O'Sullivan 1-2, Keane Boland 1-1. But yeah, Galway's a whole different story. Definitely like second best team in the country, I think, during the league, like no doubt. Consensus kind of best team, like number 2 contender for the All Ireland after Limerick. Like Brian Kincannon looked really good, Evan Nyland really good. Colin Mannion, probably the best player I thought in the league. The whole different story. I wonder if I gone too much here, but I think this is Galway easy favourites. Galway -8.
Okay, Gary. I will give you the same courtesy that I gave PJ and tell you that you do have a chance to steal here.
Yeah, it's like obviously Galway will be favourites, and rightly so. It's kind of hard to know how much like credit will be given to how much notice will be taken of the fact that Dublin were so comfortable over the weekend, because obviously this is a completely different task. It's just a question: do I undercut or overcut? I don't know. I think so. PJ said -8, was it?
Yep, he did.
Right. I'll go -7. I don't know. -9 seems like a big one, so I'll go -7.
That gets you the point. It's Galway -6. So it's 1-1 here. Both two against the serve points so far as we move into Munster. So look, that's going to be a really intriguing afternoon on Saturday. We move into, like, not to be Munster biased, but just the 2 games in the Munster semi-finals are just so mouth-watering. 7 o'clock on Saturday night, Limerick versus Cork in Thurles. Gary, you're up first in this one. All-Ireland champions versus the team who excited people in like one game in the league, therefore everybody thinks that they're All-Ireland contenders again, is the way I'm going to put it. But that could be unfair on Cork, and look, that's there for them to shove it down my throat on Saturday night. Yeah,
like this is a massive occasion. It's just, I know there's going to be 2,500 people at this game. Like looking at the games at the weekend, it was such a pity that the crowds were missed, like especially for championship. It just didn't feel like an occasion. I know a lot of people have been saying that. It was worse for the feud
in there, wasn't it, in a way? Because we had nothing at all last year, and you kind of got used to it. But you could hear the crowds so it kind of kept taking you out of it, as if like nobody had shown up.
Yeah, like I know, like, and I know 2,500 people. I know, like Thurles obviously holds whatever 47,000 or whatever it is, so it's going to be not much. But you'd hope that we get some sort of atmosphere. But it should be a great game. Like obviously Limerick kind of struggled to find their feet in the league for a while. I don't think they really minded that, to be honest. So they would have been aiming for this game all along. Limerick will be favourites. How much? Like Cork obviously had a good league as well. I don't know how much that will affect the handicap. I'd say maybe I'm going to go Limerick -4 here, I think.
Nobody's hit one dead on yet. Another chance, PJ.
Yeah, I had a little bit more than that written down here. So I think this is an interesting Cork team because they obviously, like, goals were a big thing for them in the league. They hit 18, which is 6 more than I think Galway, who were the next best. Like I know they did 7 of those goals were scored against Westmeath, but even if you took that out, then it would be the second most in Division 1 this year, which is. And they did hit 2, like that league game they played against Limerick. You were looking at wondering, they obviously weren't cooking with the full recipe there when it came to like the cookout, the cookout, like it was an absolute disaster. That game was over by half time. Cork came into it in the second half, but like looking at, they did hit 2 goals against Limerick. I'm guessing like teams are starting to think we're not going to score more points than Limerick, but we might score more goals than them. I think we're going to get 4 in the league. Like an interesting Cork team. It's a young Cork team. A lot of, like, so many of them are under 25. You got like there's 8 from the team that lost the under 21 final 3 years ago. have now made their senior championship debut. You're probably going to have a few more this week, like in the coming weeks. Limerick are still favourites here. Like we all know how good Limerick are. Limerick -5.
And Gary said -4. It is Limerick -3.
Oh,
lads, in a like, and maybe me knowing that influenced my random attack on Cork before we did this, because I just feel that if you think that Kilkenny are -3 against Wexford and Limerick are -3 against Cork, those two, the two of them being the same doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. But look, we'll see what happens. Obviously, a lot of people know a lot more than I do, but Limerick -3 in Thurles. We've talked a lot about the next game, lads, Sunday's game. So we might just quickly get the handicaps for Tip and Clare, and then we'll move on to the football. It's 2-1 to Gary, but PJ, you're up next.
Yeah. I thought Clare looked pretty good at the weekend, a bit better than I thought they were going to be. Waterford were hurt by those injuries a bit more than we thought they would as well. Like when I think of the Tip here, I think that last game against Waterford in the league, where the defence looked very, very, very vulnerable.
Yeah.
I still think Tip are favourites here. Like Tip -2 is what I'm going to say.
Gary.
Yeah, I think Clare were much better team and played okay without being all that impressive over the weekend. So I think -2 might be a little bit low. So I'd say -3 for Tip.
Okay, and again, nobody's right on, but it is Tip -4, which gives Gary a so by the way, Tip bigger favourites than Limerick. I'm saying nothing, but that gives Gary a 3-1 lead here. So PJ's in a bit of trouble, and I don't have a tiebreaker, lads. So I hope to God we could have our first ever guess the handicaps draw. But let's move on to the football. We've been talking a lot about hurling. That's incredibly enticing weekend's action to try and watch all 4 of those games. Will take up the whole weekend, but there's also time to squeeze in a football game, 2:00, or is it 2:00 on Sunday? It's the Sunday game anyway. Galway versus Roscommon in the Hyde, so it's actually probably Roscommon versus Galway. Connacht semi-final. Who's up first here?
Gary, I believe.
Me, yeah. Me, like the Connacht Championship. It seems every year that there's just one result that kind of surprises us. Like either Roscommon win or Galway enters favourites against Mayo, and Mayo end up hammering them or something. So could this be the one? Like maybe Roscommon's record in the Hyde, I think, is okay. It's pretty decent against these teams in the Connacht Championship. They weren't great in the league, but that then again, Roscommon, when they're in Division 1, that this tends to how it goes between them. But Galway did give them a fairly big beating in the league as well. I think Galway will be favourites. I'd say -3 for Galway, I think.
Okay. There's a chance here for you, PJ.
Yeah, the battle of the relegated Division 1 teams here.
Yeah.
Like Roscommon beating Galway should not be a surprise. 2019, 2017 Connacht finals, Roscommon were relegated those 2 years as well. So like league form, Roscommon going up and down the league, it's not a big deal to them. It's kind of like it's what they do. I don't know what to make of this Galway team at all. Like that league relegation game against Monaghan. Like I don't know how the hell they lost that. Like they really should have. Like that losing point that Jack McCarthy, like the winning point that Jack McCarthy kicked for Monaghan was, what a mess in the Galway defence. It's like that really kind of sticks out in my mind. It's like that was still a very good team, but I got undercut Gary a little bit here and say Galway -3. Sorry, Galway -2 is what I meant.
Oh, the fact that you said undercut, even though I'm going to give it to you. It makes it 3-2. You've got it bang on there. It is Galway -2. As you said, PJ, I'm just intrigued by this game. For Roscommon, you expect the unexpected with Roscommon. There's nothing they could do to surprise me in this game. So it's not even them. And that means them winning by 20 points, by the way. But with Galway, it's just like, there's a lot of people who want to see Pádraic Joyce succeed and want to see Galway play Galway style football after what we saw with what some people perceived as possibly missed potential under Kevin Walsh playing a certain way. Those days are gone. I think even if Kevin Walsh was still in charge, he wouldn't be playing that way anymore. But we want to see Galway kick on, but they've left us perplexed so far, I think. And I think the championship's all that's going to count. They have to go out and win this match and kind of win it with a bit of style, I think. for us to kind of go into what's going to be a Mayo Connacht final with a sort of a bit of giddiness, I suppose, that you should hope when those two teams meet. Anyway, that's my take. Last game, lads. PJ's chance to forget the first ever draw on GAA Embedded, and note to Mick to self, have an odd number next week. Offaly versus Kildare. I picked this one because we haven't talked enough about Offaly. The best game of the weekend in either code by a mile, but not that many people would have obviously seen it live unless you were watching on GAA Go. But they ended up winning by 9 points at extra time, which is an unbelievable thing in itself. Niall McNamee rolling back the years, but there seems like there's plenty more besides on this Offaly team other than the kind of the couple of well-known lads. You know, it seems like John Motton-BJ has done that kind of job where he's got together a real team here, you know. And I'm also glad that they didn't follow up playing a league. They didn't follow up saying yes to playing football by being punished and losing for it, and everybody thinking that was a stupid idea. That's a good thing, I think.
Something that stood out to me about Offaly was John Mann saying yesterday that he thinks Niall McNamee has improved over the last 2 years. Like somebody who was like this Offaly legend already has somehow he has improved. So if he can improve during John Mann's time, it makes you think like, well, other players have probably done the same as well. The thing, like, this is will be Offaly's third week out in a row here. I mean, like having lost to Derry in that league final, an extra time game at the weekend. I think that's definitely going to take a toll here, because I would have thought the Kildare would be favourites anyway. Should be mentioned, like, Louth could have won that game yesterday.
Yeah, of course.
They had a chance right at the very end, the normal time. I think Samuel Roy missed a chance. Kildare, like, what looked like it was going to be an indifferent enough season, has turned out into a good season for Kildare. Like, they've been promoted. They're going to like, I think, the kind of wider spaces of Portlaoise. The Jack O'Connor certainly seems to have talked about that a lot. I think Kildare are a big favourite there. Kildare -5 is what I have down here. I'm starting to wonder if it's enough.
Okay, Gary, I'm not going to say much, but there is a chance.
Okay. Yeah, like, to be fair, I was happy to see Offaly, even as a Westmeath man. I have to say I was happy to see Offaly win at the weekend, because it would have been a bit of a shame if they had, after such a good league campaign, to have and like, fair play to them for playing that final as well, because it was a risky move in a sense, because you didn't know how the players would be this week. But fair play to them for getting the win last week. But then, like PJ is saying, 3 weeks in a row is a lot to ask, especially with a short pre-season and how condensed the league was in general anyway. -5 sounds about right. I don't know where to go, over or under. I'm going to go Kildare -6, I think.
Oh, he was always going to go one up or one down. It's Kildare minus. It was the difference between a throwaway draw and a convincing 4-2 win. So congratulations to Gary on that. That's just one of 4 Leinster quarterfinals on this week. Dublin playing Wexford, obviously being the one that everybody is going to watch out for. I never mentioned Longford's win over Carlow earlier on in the show as well, by the way, when talking about Wexford's win over Carlow and Offaly's win over Louth. So 4 Leinster's quarterfinals. We've also got Monaghan and Fermanagh. I don't understand why there's only one Ulster quarterfinal, lads. Can anybody tell me what's going on there? Because we're rushing through this year like there's no tomorrow. But in Ulster, for some reason, we're putting off games another week so that the likes of Tyrone and Monaghan and Cavan and all these teams aren't out for another for 2 weeks at the start of the year.
No,
I have absolutely no idea, other than, you know, it's just the way the GAA does things sometimes. You know,
that is the best stuff you could possibly get.
It makes sense because it doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, yeah. So, well, look, we'll see one quarterfinal anyway. We'll see Monaghan and Fermanagh, and also that brilliant hurling week. But keep an eye on Balls.ie all year. Thanks for watching the first episode of GAA Embedded. We had a brilliant chat with Darran O'Sullivan, a great chat with Shane McGrath. We ranked our county jerseys, away jerseys, so don't forget to get involved in the comments on that. And Gary once again won in Guess the Handicaps. He'll have a chance to defend his crown next Monday, and we'll be back with you with lots more then. Keep an eye on Balls.ie for everything. And of course, please subscribe to either YouTube or to the podcast, depending on what you're listening to, and send us a screen grab, the gaffer at Balls.ie. You'll be in with a chance of winning a GAA jersey of your choice. We'll talk to you next week.